Validation leads to motivation. When you're depressed, the thing that you're missing, your magic bullet, is that you don't have motivation. You'll use caffeine, you'll use anything you can to get motivated artificially.
Welcome, men, to another episode of the Resisting Beta podcast. You are in for a treat today. I have Dennis Procopio with me. He is the founder of Man Up Life Coaching and is an elite life coaching service for men. He's based in San Diego, and he helps other men become the best version of themselves while continuing to be a better version of himself in the process. He was noted as their company has been noted as the best life coach for men in 2022 and 2023 from Very Well Mind. So, Dennis, I really appreciate you being here, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm really kind of curious. You've heard a little bit about the Resisting Beta story and who we serve. Why are you excited to help the men of the Resisting Beta community based on what you know about us?
Because I'm a man. Because I come from hard times, and because in the hardest of times, I not only considered suicide, but tried it. And your mission is one that I'm very aligned with. Save men, uplift men, validate men.
Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, give us the journey on how you went from a man, lone wolfing it, to now helping hundreds of other men in your coaching business.
Okay. I am a Jewish Italian from the Northeast, born in 1970. I'm 52 years old, and I come from what I guess you would call a little bit of a rough background. In my life, I went to 24 different schools. I ended up in foster care. I was a victim of abuse, poverty, drugs, alcohol, all the bad stuff. Molestation, every bad thing that could happen to a kid. I got the full Monty. However, I stayed in school through it all and ended up in high school living illegally in a trailer on the side of my bus driver's house in Long Island, and graduating and getting accepted to Cooper Union for the advancement of science and art on an art scholarship, which led to teaching, which led to coaching. And here I am many years later, after having lived in almost every state in the U.S., had every stupid job you could possibly have, from lumber sorting to Easter Bunny in a mall, true story, to gallery director in the French Quarter in New Orleans, true story. I've always been offering mentorship to men along the way who were a little further behind the conveyor belt than I was, just as those people who God appointed as angels in my life did for me when they saw me out there struggling. And so I feel a tremendous responsibility to pay it forward. When I came to San Diego with my partner Celia 10 years ago in San Diego, I recognized that the job that I was doing, which was being a gallery consultant while teaching, as being an art teacher in an elementary school, wasn't fulfilling my why. I sat down at our table. I asked myself, what is it I really want to do? My answer was, I want to help men. I created the brand Man Up Life Coaching, and 10 years later, I'm kind of a big deal.
I mean, I love that. So, why Man Up Life Coaching? I mean, where does that come from?
You know where it comes from. It comes from man the hell up and do your job. That is the thing that we're constantly telling ourselves when we feel down, and we feel down when we're not being optimally productive. We don't feel optimally productive when we are not making enough money, when we are not checking the boxes that society sets out for ourselves, sets out for us as men. And of course, I'm speaking of men in a certain demographic, right? It depends on how you define male, but I think we understand what we're saying here. The guy who, in a perfect world, wants to go to school, graduate, go to college, or not, get involved in a profession that allows him to make money, find a girlfriend, maybe she becomes a wife, maybe you have some kids, and then you keep tracking along, you settle down, you leave a fantastic legacy behind, and somewhere way along where along the way you've lived a happy life. So that's the game we play. Amen.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I think that, and going against, there's so much there to where I think there's the the white picket fence facade, right? To where we're always chasing this vision of what society thinks we should do and what we're actually meant to do and what it means to be a man in today's society and what it actually, like, what society is telling us, right? So I think that that man up thing can do you get flack from that? I mean, do you
Of
feel
course I
like,
do.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'm gonna. You said a lot of interesting things, and I'm really activated right now because you're so in my wheelhouse. This is my favorite podcast I've ever been on already, because I'm like, okay, these are my guys listening right now. So, okay, first things first. The first thing you said was what made you choose man up. It's because it's a double entendre. On one hand, I am sort of poking the part of us that feels shame for not living up to certain expectations. On the other hand, like if you look at the symbol that's on my shirt here, you see it's a little stick man that's facing up. It's a little power posture and up. That really strongly represents what man up really means. It means man down sucks. So man up means that we want to lift a bro up out of his misery. So, I'm sort of using a little bit of a FOMO tactic to get guys to come to my business because they're like, yeah, I need to man up. But then when they get here, they learn, no, here we use brotherly love to lift a man up. And brotherly love means unconditional love. I don't care if you sleep in a puddle or you sleep in a mansion. Every guy is going to have an internal struggle, and we're here to help as a community.
Yeah, I remember there was a Chris Rock skit, and he had said that the unconditional love only exists for like dogs and a couple other examples. So when you say the word unconditional love, that's where my head goes. So define unconditional brotherly love for me and give some examples. I don't know how many men I've met have actually experienced that. So I'm curious about that.
Okay, so if I use the term love, I'm using a term that's already loaded because men have been conditioned to feel a little bit squeamish when we talk about emotions like love. You know,
Weird, right?
I mean, we were raised to learn that we're made of snakes and snails and puppy dog tails, and they're made of sugar and spice and everything nice. So right from the beginning, you are not rewarded for being super loving and emotional. You're rewarded for choking back your emotions, being reasonable, being robotic, being analytical, being a provider, and being, to quote Shakespeare, who in Julius Caesar describes Brutus as a man whose emotions were never swayed beyond his reason. That stoicism is considered attractive in a man. So for a guy to get in touch with the idea of loving himself and loving other people means that he needs to let go of judging himself and judging other people. So to answer your question, when I use the term unconditional love, it means I'm saying, Andrew, as your brother, I love you and your bald head and your beard and your very stern brow looking at me right now. No matter what you do, I don't care if you accidentally bump your car into my motorcycle. I don't care if you tell me I have a big Italian Jew nose. I don't care what you do. I love you as a bro. Unconditional. There's nothing you can do, even if you make a critically poor decision that inconveniences me. I still offer you love. That's what it means.
I think that's a really refreshing stance because most of my life I was in sales. Like was in sales, marketing, and most relationships are transactional. We're transactional, where I'd meet people and I'd have the concept or the idea is like, what can I get from them, right? Or how can I accomplish what I want to do through this person, which is a really shitty human being to be, and it sucked, and my relationships and my life was capped, and I didn't have very many. Oddly enough, didn't have very many close friends, right? Because who wants to be a friend with that person, right? And even to this day, when people like try to do me a favor or do something nice, I find myself like questioning, like, what do you want from me? You know, like that weird. So I really appreciate the concept of unconditional love, to where it's like it's the difference between a scarcity world and an abundant world. And that is something that I really value from what you just said about just that unconditional love, right? My cup is full. I am willing to pour into you because you are my fellow man. Because there's
Right.
enough love out there, right? And I just love
Right.
that.
Right. And the idea, if you think of a candle rather than like pouring, if you think of a candle, the idea that I can use my light to light your light without losing my light, it's a good analogy, right?
Right.
So where does I want to double back to something that you said without taking you too far off your main thread here. You talk about having been in sales, and you express a certain amount of disdain for your former modus operandi, which is that you saw people in terms of utility, right? And sort of always had an angle like, how can I get what I need by putting this person through some sort of conditional logic funnel that gets me what I want? Right, right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. I have a lot of respect for people who are manipulative enough to be able to set those funnels up. The problem isn't that you have that ability. I'm manipulative in the sense that as an artist, I have to manipulate tools. Manipulation isn't a bad word. Manipulation's only a bad word when you use your superpowers incorrectly. So, for example, you manipulated me and got me onto a podcast when I don't have time for this crap, man. So you did a good thing. You used your superpowers for good, and now I'm out here as another bro sending a positive message to men. Similarly, there's a dirty side to my business, which is that I have a quota. I need to make sales, right? And I'm very aware of the fact that this is going to, podcasts are great for SEO and it's going to give me organic reach. But I don't feel guilty because when I get someone to come to Man Up Life Coaching, I promise them, if you can't lose the weight, don't worry, I'll manipulate you into losing the weight. You know what I mean? If you can't do 100 push-ups a day, don't worry, I'll manipulate you into doing it. So I would suggest, not that you invited me on here to coach you, but I would suggest that you maybe forgive yourself for your powers of manipulation since you're using them appropriately. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the hardest. I am a man who is the most hard on himself.
Of course you are.
Almost to a point of self-masochism.
Yep.
That's something that I've learned about myself, to where it's like, and I appreciate the opportunity to give myself some grace, right? Because I think that as men, our fathers didn't give us a lot of grace sometimes, and that teaches us not to, doesn't necessarily help us build that tool set to give ourselves grace when we're being a little bit too hard on ourselves. And that is something I appreciate you doing right there.
I want to speak to that, but I warned you before off camera. I warned you. I'm a monologuist like a mofo. But if you give me the mic for a second, I have something that I think your audience will really vibe with. And I think it'll be a really nice transition from what you just said and where we got organically to sort of, okay, I'm in the valley, but how do I get out and what's the fix? Would you be interested?
Absolutely. Let's go, brother.
Okay. So after about 5 years of coaching, I started to notice that there are some similarities from session to session. And so I started to take those similarities and recognize them as universals for my coaching demographic. I noticed that guys are typically reading off of what I consider to be a 7-step failure script. And they all want success, but the actions that they're taking are failure actions. So I would like to sort of walk you through what the technically I could even bust it down to 6 steps. I could say 6 steps, 6 steps failure, 6 steps success. So here's how it sounds. Okay. The failure script is going to go judgment, rage, lethargy, insecurity, risk avoidance, stagnation. Now let me walk you through that. Step 1. Guys tend to be self-critical, highly self-critical, and they are therefore equally critical of others because they're holding others to the same standard by which they judge themselves. The reason for this is because we associate our value with performance, right? We're competency addicts at the end of the day. We want to demonstrate our competency through achievement. And so when we don't feel that we're achieving optimally, we self-punish really hard. That self-punishment, and it's everything you've ever heard. It's some dad in the stands going, yelling at his son because he struck out. That stays with you. And it becomes a part of this sort of shit script that you run subconsciously and consciously over and over. Bad, bad dog, bad, bad. So, right. So that's number one. That constant punishment, perpetual judgment, that constant attack, leads to you losing your temper. It leads to rage. So you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to lose your temper, which means you're going to externalize your anger, and we know what that looks like. You go to jail or somebody puts you in check. You walk around life like you're freaking Nate Diaz. You got a chip on your shoulder and you're freaking, right? You're dickhead guy, or you choke it down and you have nice guy syndrome. You're Mr. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. Right? Most of us eventually learn to be the second guy after trying to be the first guy and getting put in check, right? Your mom, your wife, society, you're a toxic male, So you're like, okay, gotta compartmentalize it. And this is really a big deal what I'm saying here, because a lot of guys are compartmentalizing their rage, and they don't understand that by compartmentalizing the rage, that is what leads to depression. I once had a therapist say to me, I thought this was like the best thing I ever heard. Depression is rage turned inward. Right. So step 3 of this process, is that when you compartmentalize your hostility and turn the attack inward, you end up with a ground fault. You become lethargic. You're grounding out. It's a lot of work to do anything. That's what depression is. It's like my leg feels like 100 pounds. I can't lift it out of bed. Everything, I just in the molasses, right? Everything, I just feel like I'm in this black hole and I can't get the freak out of it. So that, of course, is going to lead to to insecurity, right? Because you're not using your voice optimally. You're not speaking your truth. You're not standing your ground. You're hiding, you're shrinking, you're internalizing, you're an unproductive male, you're lacking confidence, right? And in fact, that's the thing that then leads to step 5 in this process, which is risk avoidance. You start lacking the confidence to take risks, and those risks can be creative risks, they can be financial risks, they can be emotional risks, whether it's buy the Bitcoin or talk to the girl or whatever the risk is. Ask for the raise, you start to move away. You become risk avoidant. That the next thing that's going to happen there is that we move to the final step, which is stagnation. You're stuck. You're stuck. You checkmated yourself. You've hit a plateau. Your groove became a rut. You're circling the drain, and now you're listening to a podcast of two bald guys telling you how you can maybe fix your shit. You know, like, please give me the magic bullet, bro. Okay, so I get it. How do I get out of this? I'm stuck.
For sure.
You're right. So before I go on to the success script, let me hand the mic back and say, does any of that resonate with you?
For sure, man. I think that when you talked about the bad dog thing, I think that that's something that resonates with me a lot. More so, like, I call it I've talked about it on the podcast before, where it's like the Labrador Retriever effect when it comes to women and validation. To when you go do something and you expect something in return for it. To where, like, I win. It's like you went and got the ball, you brought it back, and you expect the pat on the head. But instead of the pat on the head, is expecting sex. Where it's like, hey, I just went out inside to mow the lawn and took the trash out and fixed all of these things. And now I come back, I tell you about it. I want to be pat on the head, and actually, I want sex. But and I think that one of the biggest books I've read for me is that No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover, when he talks about overt contracts and a lot of this nice guy syndrome and how terrible it actually is, to where it's more toxic than anything else, but more like to men, to their own power, their own masculinity, to where nobody can trust them because you don't know what you're going to get. I was just a chameleon trying to tell people at every social interaction. I was a chameleon who would try to become what I thought the other person across the table from me wanted me to become.
Yes.
It was fucking terrible. Like,
yes,
it was a terrible life to live in. And in fact, it's how I met my ex-wife. Is I read in a book, some pickup artist said, hey, become this person and you will get beautiful women. And prior to that, I didn't get beautiful women. In fact, I was a virgin until all the way until college, right? So I'd have a few cocktails in me, and I'd become this version. And then all of a sudden, when I was 10 years into a marriage, my ex-wife tells me, I like you better when you're drunk. And I was like, what? And I was like, I don't like being hungover, so I don't like drinking as much as my body did when I was in college. Now that I'm 40 years old, and at the time I was in my late 30s, it's like I don't want to be that guy anymore. So like, well, something's got to change. And if you don't like sober me, then we got some big changes that need to be happening here. So I like the compartmentalizing, and the when you mentioned depression is rage turned inward. I love that because for myself, when depression hits, it means that I have strung a series of days and moments of not keeping promises to myself. And the longer I let that go, it goes from sadness or like kind of an uncomfortable like frustration to sadness to depression if I allow that sequence of events to continue, and it's all downward momentum. And then I have to start back from scratch to where it's like, okay, what are some small promises? Okay, well, just don't hit the snooze button, or let's just go for a walk, or let's drink a gallon of water a day, or whatever, some easy wins, and then kind of starting to stack those easy wins up versus just keeping that momentum when I have it. So that's my reaction to your 6 steps. So.
Yeah, no, there's so much to say in there, and I'm actually going to just do a little quid pro quo here before I go to the success script, which is actually, hey, here's how we solve this problem. But I'm going to stay in the valley a little bit and just sort of poke the pain points a little bit more, right?
So, my friend.
Yeah, because this is relatable. This
For
is
sure.
Guys,
I'm an open book.
Yeah, you guys are speaking my language here. So when you said the thing about, you related to the bad dog analogy because you sort of said, I have this sort of, Labrador Retriever idea, which is that if I go get you the thing that makes you happy, then I get the cookie. I get
Get
the
love.
I get yeah, I get the Scooby snack, man. Good dog, right?
Yeah.
Um, right. And it's interesting. So, of the five love languages, which by now everybody's heard, right?
Hmm.
For anybody who hasn't heard it, I think the suggests that we all have, basically these five love languages, which include physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, and gift giving. I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure I have that right. The two that men most often want are physical touch and words of affirmation. And you literally said in your piece there, we want the pat on the head, right? There's your physical touch, and we want the approval. We want the words of affirmation, right?
Hmm.
We want the chick who's constantly hanging on us, grabbing our shoulders and traps and pecs because we're so jacked, and and rubbing our big manly lats and telling us, "Oh, baby, you're so strong and wonderful and a great provider, and you're the best in so many ways. You're
Your
everything, right?"
penis is magical. You
It's
just
magical. It's the
gives
best
me.
one I've ever seen.
You got the magic stick.
You have the magic stick. It solves all of my problems. Um, and so we want the physical touch, and right, we want the words of approval. You're so smart. Just anything positive. So of course, the flip side of that is that when women criticize men, they don't understand how much power they have, man.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because not only are we now not getting the approval, we're getting bad dog, you suck. I should get a different dog. Like, oh
Hmm.
my God, that's going to give the dog anxiety. So, so rather than get into, you and I could do hours on relationship stuff because I definitely work with men in how to not make the same mistakes in their next relationship, right?
Hmm.
Um, but we'll stick on this path right now. Before you worry about working through your relationship with another person, the first thing you have to do is you have to get you right. So I'm going to move over to this failure script and the success script. When I tell a guy, hey, your self judgment is leading to rage, which you're internalizing, which is leading to lethargy and non clinical depression, which is leading in turn to insecurity and lack of confidence, which is leading to risk avoidance, which is leading to stagnation, which is why you are here. I tell them my experience has been that no knock against evidence based clinical therapy, but most guys who I know go to therapy and they come out feeling like, first of all, I don't dig the clinical environment. It suggests to me that there's something wrong with me. Two, I don't feel like the person who is the therapist, they're necessarily objective. So I don't feel like I'm there. I have a bro with me in the trenches. I feel like I have somebody looking down at me rather than across to me. And finally, the very obvious mirroring that they're doing, encouraging me to do an hour of info dumping and self-talk isn't really. I walk out of there feeling worse than I did because now I have all this shit on my mind and I still don't know how to fix the problems.
Right.
guys Women want to talk about their feelings first and then they want to solve problems later, as a general rule. I know there's a million genders now and everything, but I'm just saying in the binary world, not to get political, but just in the binary world, in a conservative world, right? Um, typically, and there are exceptions, but typically the woman wants to talk about her problems first, and then once she feels better, she's processed her emotions surrounding this thing, she's de escalated, and now she's like, okay, I feel better. Thank you for listening. Hey, I think I'm going to start to solve my own problems now. The guy wants solutions. He wants to fix his problem. Once he's fixed his problems, he'll surely have a beer with you and talk about, well, that sure sucked. And now he'll tell you about his feelings after it's fixed. Am I right?
For sure. Yeah. It's a common question I'll ask when I'm talking to my girlfriend where I'll be like, Do you want to solve this problem or are we venting?
Right.
I've even done that with the guys I work with, where it's like, hey, are you looking for a hug? Are you looking to someone to listen? Or are you looking to someone to brainstorm and solve this problem together? Because I can do one of the three, but I don't. I want to know what you need before I start jumping into something.
Straight up. And that's actually really kudos to you for having good communication skills and sort of orienting them before launch. Um, so here's what the success script looks like. It looks like a guy says, "Okay, you sound like you understand my problem. You sound like you appreciate that I'm male and that I want to fix this. If it were a busted pipe, I'd go to a plumber. If it were a flat tire, I'd get a guy for that. Something's broken. You seem to understand what's broken. How do I fix it?" And so the solution I offer is this. The first step is validation, not surprisingly. If you think of all the words I'm about to say here, validation, motivation, confidence, risk-taking, change, and opportunity, you'll notice that they're actually the antithesis of the first six words that I gave you. Validation versus judgment. This is the number one problem. You nailed it. You seek validation from external sources. Guys are seeking external validation. Dating sites, porn, social media, video games, sports bets, anything that gives you a dopamine hit. Comfort food, alcohol, weed. I can play this game all day. And number one is chick approval, female approval. Mommy, am I good enough, right? Do you love me? Am I better than the next guy? They're seeking unconditional love. So one of the ways in coaching that I change this is I teach guys, and I mean I literally train guys the way you would train your biceps. I train guys to validate themselves, which is really difficult for them. It's cringy even because they're not used to saying nice things about themselves, and anything that sounds like an affirmation to them feels hokey and stupid. It's a lot easier for a dude to say, "Oh, I'm a fucking moron," than it is for a guy to say, "I'm a really great guy and I deserve success in my life." Like that sounds like uncomfortable for them, but that's part of the problem. So step one is validation. The man up moment for the guy who comes here is, "Hey, you're uncomfortable giving yourself self-love. Well, guess what? Tough crap." Two, validation leads to motivation. When you're depressed, the thing that you're missing, your magic bullet, is that you don't have motivation. You'll use caffeine, you'll use anything you can to get motivated artificially. Well, validation leads to motivation. This is a secret formula that good teachers and good parents know. Now, the truth of the matter is, whether you had good parents or bad parents, whether you had a wonderful life or a terrible life, at some point on your own, you're going to need to pick up the gauntlet and to father your inner child and to be able to validate yourself so that you can have motivation without having an expectation to get it from someone else or feeling that you need it from someone else. When you do that, motivation will lead to higher levels of confidence. So by continuing to practice this, you start to become more self-sufficient. You genuinely feel a power surge, and other people around you start to see it. You have that, like, starting to have sex again sort of glow, and that's what makes you attractive to other people. That leads to step four. Confidence leads to risk taking. Now, in my experience, everyone has opportunities for growth. You have to lean into the areas where you're least comfortable. I have a guy who's a client who sits on, I'm not kidding, who sits on 2 million acres of land. He's an outfitter up in Canada, and this is a guy who hunts moose and bear, and he's kind of a scary dude in the sense that anything in nature fears him. I brought this dude into a situation like this. I brought him into a Zoom call. He hid under his cap and in his beard so far back, he was terrified to open up in a group environment. So the next step, which is risk taking, doesn't mean go confront a bear. It means confront the thing that you're afraid of or makes you the least comfortable. And that can be anything. It can be public speaking, it can be jumping out of a plane, it can be changing professions, it can be asking a girl to marry you. But so you take the risk. Risks lead to change. This is step 5. And this is where we start to have liftoff. When you take risks, things change. And yeah, you're going to have a lot more failures than you do successes. I mean, ask any BJJ white belt. You spend the first, few months just dying on the mats trying to survive. But the key is persistence. If you keep grinding, and keep cool, you'll get stronger through the process. And most importantly, and this is the money shot, change leads to opportunity. Number 6, opportunity. So rather than sitting around complaining that you aren't getting any breaks, by using your confidence to take risks which lead to change, at some point opportunity is going to come along. You take it, and the next thing you know, you're in a higher tax bracket or got the girl you want or whatever. So that's the success script. Now, how do you resonate with that?
First off, I love the process. I am a process and systems nut. So I appreciate the documented journey towards one. It makes the men listening to this and myself too feel like they're not alone. It's like, okay, I'm somewhere on this spectrum, somewhere on this pendulum, and there's a point here that I'm stuck. And depending on the men listening to this, you're, I think, being stuck at one of these spectrums, to whether you're stuck in the failure script, which I'm hoping most of the men here, if you listen to this podcast enough, you're swinging out of that. But I think we get stuck in the success script more so, whether it be through where we get to a certain level of success and all of a sudden we start burning it all down again because of our own limited self-belief, and we give us ourselves like a glass, well, not a glass ceiling, but that's the term that popped into my head.
The opposite of that, like a lead ceiling. Like you're not going through that. You give yourself a ceiling and say, this is as good. You stop believing in yourself.
Right. Or you only believe you are so good, you are good enough up to a certain point. Right.
Yep.
And then once you get to that point, you're like, oh, okay, well, I really like challenge, and I really like putting myself through challenges, and but so I'm gonna just start all over again and start breaking shit on purpose because I was good at that where I got to. I'm good at getting it to where I got, but I'm terrified of getting to the next level for whatever reason, right? So whether it's and I think to me, it's when that person would get stuck at one of these 6 steps. So that's where my head goes to as you walk through the 6 steps, and that was validation, motivation, confidence, risk-taking, change, and opportunity. Did I get those right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you did. So I want to circle back. Men, we do love structure. Most of the guys that I work with, they're systems and processes guys. They have, engineer brains. If you give them a construct to work within, they'll learn the rules and they'll do the thing. But if you just put them on a stage and say improvise, that's when you see them get really nervous. So this is where, as an art teacher, right? Let's roll back to the beginning of the call. I consider myself to be a polymathic thinker. That means I'm a whole brain thinker, and I'm both a creative out of the box lateral thinker where ideas come from, as well as a linear, systematic, pragmatic thinker, which is where structure comes from. And I think if you, as a guy, work on being strong in both of these areas and get them to synthesize and work together, you can get some really cool stuff. I went to a school for art, architecture, and engineering. The artists were all form, the engineers were all function, and the architects were that interesting hybrid between form and function. In where I'm going with this is in the game that we play, that I play coaching guys. I offer a structure like, oh, we got the 6 steps, and the 6 steps of success, and the 6 steps of failure, and you dot your I's and you cross your T's and you make an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, that's all fine. But there also has to be this underpinning of, hey, by the way, this structure is contained. Physics is contained within metaphysics. Structure is contained within a big scary void that is called the cosmos, and that shit's kind of scary when you really smoke a bowl and think about it. You know what I mean? And that can give you tremendous anxiety. So in the moments when you have anxiety because you have an existential crisis thinking about how big and scary life is, that's where you have to come back to love. There's this balance that I play between structure and just one love. You hear go to Jamaica sometime, one love. That's a pretty profound idea if you really think about it. And it means that we as men are a brotherhood, and here one loves you, man. So holy, right? Here one loves you. So no matter how bad you fail, no matter how productive you aren't, no matter where you are in the process, no matter where you are in the system, at some point you're going to need to allow yourself to be playful on stage here in life, to be creative, to be improvisational, to take risks that may get you to that even higher level or may send you back down the chutes and ladders. You might slide backward a little bit, and you got to brush your shoulders off. Remember that here one loves you. We all support you. We got you. Don't even trip. Get up and start again, and let's go. Do you feel that?
Yeah, man, I think that it's interesting, the word love. And we talked a little bit about love languages early on in the episode. And I had this light bulb moment that after reading the love language book years ago and talking about it a lot in my dating processes and that kind of stuff, and understanding it towards like when I'm seeking a partner, hey, here's how I receive love, and also learning how they receive love. But one of the things that didn't dawn on me was, do I apply my own love languages to myself? And this kind of circles back to how this whole conversation started, where if we don't give ourselves love in our own love languages of words of affirmation, from most men, it's physical touch and words of affirmation, to where it's like, do you demonstrate?
Touch yourself?
Well, that's,
I'm giving you shit. I'm giving you shit.
You had to go there.
I had to go there. Guys, you're welcome. No, but go ahead. You have a good idea here.
Do you touch yourself, right? Do you touch yourself lovingly? And sensually, no, we're not going there.
Too late.
Too late. No, yeah. Well, I mean, we all have the brain of our 12-year-old child self, So, but I digress. So the love language to where it's like, okay, well, are you showing yourself love from like, okay, well, physical touch is a little bit different component, but like, are you prioritizing yourself first and putting yourself first? And for me, that's like my physical touch towards like, am I doing what I want to do? And
right.
And the second one is words of affirmation, is something we talked about earlier, to where it's like, if you can't love yourself, and it sounds super hokey, and I'm gonna sound, that's okay, and just get over it, is that those words of affirmation, to where if you are giving your ex-wife or your current partner shit over not giving you the love language that you expect, it makes you feel love, but are you actually leading and giving that to yourself? And that comes down to the true masculine energy of like just leading first, to where you have to just lead by example in your life first to allow the people around you to follow. Because if you don't lead, oddly enough, nobody will follow you.
I actually would love to speak to that. I know I'm paying attention to the time, and I know we're pretty much at the 45-minute mark, but I want to really share this piece because I think it's relevant and it's a takeaway for guys. the name of your podcast is Resisting Beta, right? And so there is this misconception, thanks to all the Andrew Tates in the world, and I'm not throwing shade, I'm just saying, thanks to all the troglodytes out there that are afraid to use the word love without feeling like it means that they want to eat a bag of dicks. Sorry, I didn't mean. I saw you taking a sip, and I'm like, don't say that. You're going to choke the guy. But the reality is, it is alpha as fuck to be a strong enough of a man to be able to father your own inner child and to love your inner child so that he gets the lessons that he never got from your father because your not father never got it from his father. And if you're going to have a son or a daughter in this world, you're going to need to know what it is like to love in a way that doesn't make you feel squirrely and uncomfortable about those good emotions. So I have this thing I did. I listed out all of the things that I thought were bad about myself, or or if they weren't bad about myself, or things that I didn't want to become, like things that grind my gears, like if somebody's inconsiderate, if they're not on time, if they come from a place of lack or whatever. And I listed out all of these negative adjectives. Like here's the thing I'm most scared of becoming, and I took the opposite of each adjective. Okay, I decided that I was going to phrase my validations. I don't use the term affirmation. I was going to phrase my validations as you statements, second person, just like you would say to a child or a dog, you. Because if you say I, you're taking praise, but if you say you, you're giving praise, right? I don't care if you're religious or not, you can still give praise, right? So you statements, present tense of the verb. You don't say I'm going to be thin. You say, you are thin, right? So number one, you statements. Number two, present tense of the verb. Number three, no negatives. Like you see the football helmets that for a while we're all saying like stop hate, and I was like stop, hate, stop. And then some genius figured out, I think these guys are men enough to be able to wear something that says choose love. And I'm like, that's what you got to do. These are men. They're not scared to put choose love. So I took these negative adjectives that I feared I was going to become, or that I was some bad person. I took the antonyms of those. I made them positive adjectives. I turned them into you statements, present tense verb, and I run that shit like a mantra. So my 11-line mantra that you will catch me talking to myself driving in my car saying all the time is you are good, you are kind, you are gentle, you are patient, you are peaceful, you are humble, you are loving, you are blessed, you are healthy, you are wealthy, you are strong. 10 years ago when I started that, only about half of those things were true. Now they're all true because what you say is, it manifests. So back to you. I think your idea that, hey, it might sound a little funny, but you need to offer the words of approval that you would receive. Damn straight, I agree with you. And I think that's a really alpha concept.
Thank you, my brother. So, Matt, I can't believe it's been 45 minutes. This is crazy. But I know all good things have to end sometimes. So I want to round out this episode with the two questions I ask every single guest. The first one of my favorites, is what does it mean to be a man to you?
I am maybe a little bit old school in the sense that I do tend to think that if you are anatomically male, in most cases, barring exceptions, that's an indicator. I think socially, I think it really kind of depends on the relationship that you have with others. But a man who loves God by any name, I don't care if it's Jehovah, I don't care if it's Allah, I don't care if it's the flying spaghetti monster. If you accept that there's something that is bigger than you, that binds and connects us all, if you tune into that as a source of highest love and highest intelligence, and you think with the big head, I think that is that's what being a man is. It's loving yourself, loving whatever that is, God, and loving your brother as you would love yourself. That's really my definition of being a man.
Awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. And then the last thing that I like to ask is, if you were to give the men homework and give them a baby step, because I think that you listen to a podcast and you hear so many things, and too many gurus suggest this laundry list of activities that if you try to do them all at once, you're going to fall right on your damn face. So what is some baby steps that you would assign the men over the next 7 days to get some quick wins, some momentum towards becoming the best version of themselves?
Meditate for 30 minutes to an hour a day. And by meditate, I mean sit down, shut the fuck up, look at a wall, and when the timer goes off, you're done. If any thoughts happen along the way, you're free to observe them, but you're not forced to engage with them. Meditate. Practice stillness, because you're an overthinker. The second thing I would suggest that you do is practice the validation of self and others incessantly, while recognizing judgmental thoughts and judgmental statements and redirecting those, because those are poison. Those aren't working for you.
And then, men, I will give Dennis is all over the social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. So I'll add those in the show notes. And he has a lot of great content on his website. His blog is amazing. So check him out. Now, Dennis, can you just the last little bit here, just give the men, I'm like, hey, I really love what Dennis has talked about. How can I get more help from you? And give them a call to action on how they can take action on getting out of wherever they're stuck in the 2 6 steps we talked about, if they're looking to seek help and stop lone wolfing it in their life.
Okay, here's your call to action. If you're picking up what I'm putting down and you want to work with me or one of my coaches, my business is called Man Up Life Coaching. You can go to manupLifeCoaching.com, and there's a big red button that you can push that you can set up a call with me or one of my coaches. If you would like to go to my social links, you can go to manupLifeCoaching.com/links, and all of the social links are there. And if that's too long of a URL to remember, you can go to malelifecoach.com.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you being here. I just want to spend a second to acknowledge you for the journey that you have taken and how much courage it took you to persevere through all of the shit that you went through as a child, and to man up in your own life and to own your own shit. Because it's really easy, and so many men nowadays numb it. They avoid it. They shove it deep down in there and they pretend like everything is good. But I really appreciate you for the ripple effect, that hard work of owning your demons, and how that kind of made you become the man that you are today. So I want to honor you and show you the utmost respect and appreciation for that journey of who you are today. So thank you so much.
I humbly appreciate you for saying that, and back at you for doing God's work out here, brother.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you being here.
All right.